The first part of our series explored how discoveries in cell and gene therapy have opened up new opportunities for the world of medical research. For the next part of our series, we'll dive into how a research company called Vertex is overcoming scientific challenges and unlocking the potential of these technologies for people with genetic diseases.
We really have to invent processes and designs as we go.
One challenge is developing methods or assays in how we can model this long-term durability of the cells in the lab. So mimicking what would happen long-term, but in the lab, in a Petri dish.
Each disease area weaves a complex web, which these scientists are unraveling.
As many people would know, in type 1 diabetes, there are really two problems. One is the patient's own insulin-producing cells, so-called beta cells, are absent, and so the patient needs to measure their blood sugars and inject insulin to control their metabolic health. The second problem is why these cells are missing, and that's because of attack by the immune system. One of the things I really like here at Vertex is that I meet people who are so accomplished in their fields, like Chris Thanos. And I'm remembering a time when we were talking about, from my perspective, was kind of a big challenge, and I didn't quite know how to describe it, but we just sat and we're talking more or less on a napkin about the idea.
We take prototyping and design and create these, what started as a napkin sketch, and we create tangible physical products that can be tested and iterated on rapidly to achieve an eventual candidate for the clinic.
More and more, however, the researchers at Vertex are realizing that while they may be trying to solve different problems, they can often find common solutions across projects.
We not only have teams that are working with diabetes, but we have other areas and other diseases. And we have different expertises. There are some things that are in common. We can use the same tool or technology or assay to ask different questions.
Having different disease teams collocating in the same physical space is essential to fostering collaboration. What I think is unique about Vertex is that we always say we're not hiring only the best people, but we hire the right people.
A key differentiator for the team is not only being able to find red threads between their different research areas in their recently established Leiden Center for Cell and Gene Therapies, but to focus on the long-term goal of their work.
A lot of companies talk about how they would like to get into the cell and genetic therapy space, but they don't have the long-term vision to actually get it done.
One of the things I particularly like about Vertex is that it's run by scientists for science and medicine. Now that might sound obvious. You would think all pharmaceutical companies are so, but that's not often the case.
When I joined Vertex, we were a much smaller company. Despite all our advances and discoveries, we still reinvest a lot of our resources back into research. We are always encouraged to explore different areas.
I've worked in an academic background for many years, several decades. One of the biggest differences I know here is the work is, first of all, focused on patients. So everything we do begins on how will we help patients in the long term.
As the organization grows, so too does the scientists' purview. What once started as a small team is quickly growing to take on the next era of scientific discovery. Because these scientists know what it can mean for the people living with the diseases.
We go all in, and we recognize that our first therapy is not our last therapy. We constantly are trying to out-innovate ourselves.
Any of the programs here on blood diseases or diabetes all have big challenges, but Vertex isn't committed to just trying one thing. And so if you know that it's a hard problem to solve and it'll take some years, Vertex is a great place to do that because they won't give up.